Welcome to Season 1, Episode 19 of Torchbearers, the Valpo University Alumni Podcast. On today's episode, we talk with alumnus Andrew Robinson, class of 2010, and recipient of the 2020 First Decade Award about his Valpo story. Stay tuned! Hello, fellow Valpo alumni, and welcome back to Torchbearers, the Valpo University Alumni Podcast. For those of you who are just joining in, welcome. My name is Michael Beaver, class of 2007, and I serve as your host for the podcast. We want to take a moment to wish Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of our listeners and Valpo alumni. While this year certainly has been different, hopefully this holiday season will be a time of rest and rejuvenation for all of you. Today we hear from Andrew Robinson, class of 2010, and one of the Alumni Association's First Decade Award recipients about his Valpo story and journey to becoming a music educator. Our guest on the podcast today is Andrew Robinson, class of 2010. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure thing. So, Andrew, to get us started and kicked off, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your time at Valpo and your path after graduation?
I graduated from Valpo in 2010, so I started in the fall of 2006. Originally, I was a meteorology and theater double major, but the meteorology only lasted one semester, so then I switched to music and theater. Ultimately graduated with a BA in music performance and a theater minor. I was a Christ College scholar as well. I did a lot of things at Valpo. I was one of those chapel rats, they term. So I lived in the chapel, especially when it came to music related things, cantorai, handbell choirs, matins choir, morning prayer music planning, celebrate, candlelight, you name it, I was involved with it in some way, shape, or form during my 4 years.
Sure.
And if I wasn't there, I was probably in the VUCA, doing music or theater things.
Just right across the street from each other, right?
It was very convenient, yes. I was also a brother in Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia and did some Greek life things while I was there. So it was more than I could have ever imagined, that's for sure. I kept myself out of trouble. I kept myself busy. Since I graduated, I immediately went and got my master's of music teaching degree from Oberlin College, which was a master's degree plus initial teaching license. I spent a year after my wife, who's also a Valpo grad, Brooke Robinson. She's an elementary music teacher now. And after we got married, spent a year piecing together a bunch of part-time jobs, and then we said, okay, whoever gets full-time teaching job first will go wherever. So she and I relocated to north central Iowa, where she taught elementary general music for a Catholic school, and I taught upper elementary and middle school choir and general music for a year, and then high school choir for a year. We then moved back to the region, and I spent 2 years in LaPorte teaching elementary music, and then 4 years at Munster High School as their choir director. And then since this past August, I started my own voice studio. So I've got some voice students that I teach in a virtual environment, done some subbing and some other kind of music and non-music related things.
Well, it sounds like you have definitely been able to adapt a little bit here to our lovely remote virtual environment that we seem to be living in lately. How has that been teaching via Zoom or whatever your platform of choice is?
I teach on Zoom. It's going fairly well. There's definitely some things that you can't do at all or very well when you're doing voice instruction. But I'm thankful that the students that I have are very flexible, and we're doing the best that we can. And sometimes it helps me to be creative with trying to figure out how to explain things differently, when I can't, like, physically, demonstrate something in front of someone, in the same manner as what I would be doing in an online platform, or, go up and, like, physically correct posture or something like that. It's
Sure.
just not the age we're living in at the moment.
Hopefully we'll get through it soon.
I
But
hope so.
so how did your experience at Valpo help to prepare you for your current career, what you've been doing, teaching in the virtual environment, any of that?
I was privileged to do a lot of music things while I was at VU, way more than I ever would have imagined. I overloaded substantially on music courses when I was at VU, because I was fairly certain that I wanted to go into music education, but some scholarship stuff and things uh, made me not switch into music education, just kept me on the BA route.
Sure.
So I got to take methods courses and 3 semesters of conducting and 4 semesters of theory and ear training, and I got to do accompanying for morning prayer and for candlelight, which that was kind of a scary endeavor, but Dr. Brew, who was the director of chapel music at the time, she kind of pushed me into that, and I'm very grateful for that, because I've done a lot of accompanying and things since then, and had
So
several church positions.
so just going in and having to sight read the entire hymnal, both hymnals, right?
Oh my goodness, if I was sitting in the congregation the first time that I had to do a hymn sing before candlelight, I probably would have walked out, because it was a complete disaster. But yes, it definitely forced me to get a lot better at sight reading, and stuff like that. So
Sure.
I, in many ways, Valpo was like the perfect school to prepare me in ways that I didn't even think possible for all of the music things, that I've been able to do in my career, both from a church music perspective, a public school teaching perspective, from private instruction, and then just some of the other kinds of things I've been able to do that are music related or theater related. I've done a lot of music directing and stuff like that for several theatrical productions since VU.
Awesome. So, looking back in the 10 years since you graduated from Valpo, what is one thing that you wish you had known that you could go back and tell yourself, tell Andrew from 2010, some pieces of wisdom that Andrew from 2020 would want to relay?
One thing I would say is learn to say no, even though if I knew that at the time, I probably wouldn't have had some of the experiences that I did.
Sure.
But especially now that my wife and I, we have a 1-year-old son, and it's really kind of made me change my priorities a lot, so that I can be more of a father, especially, and a husband. And that dreaded 2-letter word sometimes was not very common in my
It's one
vocabulary.
of the toughest ones to say.
It is, especially when things just sound so cool, and you're like, well, of course I could do this. I might run myself into the ground, but it's worth it.
Of
Um,
course.
I mean, I kind of did that a lot at Munster too. Like I told my seniors that graduated this past spring, like, if you tell, some of your friends and stuff that you make in college, like, yeah, when I was, in choir, I got to do this, that, and the other thing. And you, you'd be hard pressed to find a group of kids that did as many things as they got to do in 4 years of time. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, and I think I'm learning that a lot more now as I get older.
Of
But
course. And I think we would all tell our younger selves that too, but at the time you're like, I can do anything. And I think that's a Valpo student thing, I think
yes,
too. When I talk to students today, it's still like, say no. Like, it's okay. You can actually say that. So
I'm in my 20s, I can handle it. And then you
of
hit your
course.
30s and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even,
Right,
make it
right.
down the stairs without, my body aching.
Too much. So, uh, who are three people that have been most influential to you in your life?
Are you speaking like specifically of Valpo people or just three
That
people in
it can
general?
be at Valpo. It can be three people in general. It can be anybody.
Hmm, that's a great question. I am going to go with surprise, surprise. They're all music people that I've
Sure.
had in my life. One I mentioned earlier, Dr. Lorraine Brew, who was the director of chapel music. She directed the Connery, she's a university organist for all 4 years while I was there. Although she was actually on sabbatical my very first semester, so I had Dr. Dennis Friesen Carper was stepping in and directing the Connery at that point. But she definitely saw a lot of things in myself musically that I did not see, especially when it came to piano things. Um, she was very smart in that she kind of kept offering me like leadership positions in Connery, hoping that I like wouldn't just abandon and like go audition for chorale or something like
Sure.
that. And that was a tough decision, to decide which of those kinds of things I thought would be more beneficial at the time to do, and I'm very thankful for all of the leadership kinds of things that she gave me, that she pushed me into. Hey, you should accompany at morning prayer. Hey, you should accompany for candlelight and things like that. And at the time I was like, are you sure about that? And um but it it forced me to grow in ways that I think I either was scared to grow in or just didn't realize I really needed a lot of pushing in. And they've helped me immensely. So she's really one of my biggest mentors that I've had throughout my life. The other Valpo person would be Dr. Jeff Dobler, who is the director of music education and bands, who I had for many, many classes while I was at VU. We also worked together for a summer at Lutheran Summer Music when he was the band director, and I was a handbell choir intern, and he was also directing one of the handbell choirs. So
Sure.
we were joined at the hip basically for a month, and since that time, um, we've had the opportunity to do some collaborative things. He was the one that invited me to be the chorus master for the world premiere of Johann de Meys Symphony No. 5 a couple of years
Okay.
ago, and um, just encouraging for the Northwest Indiana High School Choral Festival that I helped plan and start, that happened last year and sadly couldn't happen this year with all the pandemic stuff. Um, and just and then I had a VU student teacher last year who is actually now the Munster High School choir director, Luke McGinnis. And he's always just been a person that I can talk to about like anything, and he's very honest and very thorough and thought provoking. And when I was discerning whether to stay at Munster or to start this new business venture, I called him up, and we spoke and emailed and stuff. So he's really been a trustworthy person, and he's always made me feel very comfortable and pushed me again. At Lutheran Summer Music, he was the band director and had one tuba player. So I had taken brass methods with him. He's like, "Hey, you want to put your brass method skills to the test and play tuba for me in the band?" And bless him for doing that, because I was not as skilled as this eighth grader that was in the band. But it was a neat experience. And actually that young man now, he's like he is a professional tuba player and like
Oh
a
wow.
tuba teacher and stuff. Yeah, it's really cool to see like what's happened with him. um, but so yeah, I mean, and there's other VU professors that I've had that have been very impactful on my life, and pastors and stuff like that. But the other person I'm going to say for this is my secondary cooperating teacher from when I was student teaching. His name is Bill Zerke. At the time, he was the director of choirs at Avon Lake High School in Avon Lake, Ohio, which is where I did my student teaching. One of the best choral programs in the state of Ohio. When I found out I was student teaching there, my choir director I had in high school was good friends with him, and he talked like all the time about Avon Lake and stuff like that. And so I'd heard of this program, and my jaw hit the floor when my uh, university professor said, "Yes, you're going to be at Avon Lake High School, in the spring of 2011." And I was like, "Whoa!" So, and he in a lot of ways, like I felt like he was me 30 years into the future. We had a very similar style of like teaching and interacting with students and conducting and stuff like that. And he was just amazing. Like I learned so much about just how to run a program because he had like a program of 400 plus
Oh,
students out of
wow.
a school
Okay.
of 1,600. So it was like, he really knew what he was doing.
Sure. Yeah.
And, we've kept in contact since then. And, he's really kind of continued to help mold and shape me into, being an effective conductor and leader and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we'll go with those three for now.
Awesome. So, if you could step into my shoes as the interviewer, what is one question and then answer it for me you'd want me to ask you?
I was surprised you didn't ask why did you choose Valpo, out of
Okay.
all these lists of schools. So when I was looking at schools, as I mentioned when we first started this interview, I was originally a meteorology major, but I was
Mm-hmm.
interested in meteorology, theater, and music. So I looked at schools that had all of those. Had never heard of Valpo before I started looking at schools, even though I'm a
Okay.
lifelong Lutheran. I mean, isn't that sad? But I visited Valpo my junior year, fell in love with it right away. And then my senior year, it was between Valpo and one other school. And what kind of sealed the deal, it was twofold, was my music scholarship audition,
Okay.
which Valpo's, I had a great experience. I got to meet my future voice teacher, Ralph Klapis, who I study with every year, and just had a really, felt very at home. And even though I didn't end up
Sure.
like getting any music scholarship money, and then this other school that I auditioned at, it was very tense and just did not feel comfortable at all. Like the I got to take like a 15-minute lesson with one of their voice faculty and just was like on pins and needles the whole time because I don't know, it just
Okay.
felt very very stuffy. And so I was like, okay, I'm not really sure about this. And then what ultimately did it was scholarship money. Honestly, I was very fortunate that I received a founder's scholarship to study
Okay.
at VU, and this other school ended up giving me no money. So I was like, well, that's an easy decision right there.
Right? It always it's funny how sometimes that works out.
Yeah, and I've relied on my faith and stuff throughout my life, and that was definitely a God moment because at kind of going into those things, I was like, well, I could kind of go either way, I think, and then things always work out the way they're supposed to work out.
Sure.
That's my philosophy.
Awesome. And so finally to kind of wrap everything up as you're looking back on Valpo and everything, what does Valpo mean to you?
I think simply put, Valpo means home. I've met some of my best friends. I met my wife, and we've been married for almost 9.5 years now, and we have a 1-year-old son. I had more experiences than I could have ever imagined. Just it was for me, it was perfect. It was the perfect fit. Um, and I'm very happy that some of my former students are now students at VU.
Sure.
I think I have 8 or 9 maybe
Okay.
that are currently at VU, not studying a wide variety of things from music to communications to nursing to finance. And that they can kind of get some of those same experiences. It makes me happy that they can have that. And but yeah, I think that sentiment, Valpo is home, I think really summarizes everything.
Andrew, once again, thank you for being a guest with us here on Torchbearers. It was wonderful getting to talk with you, and I know we will see great things coming from you in the years ahead. To all of our alumni in podcast land, if you're interested in being a guest here on the podcast, make sure to let us know. Email us at alumni@valpo.edu. Once again, that email address is alumni@valpo.edu. We look forward to hearing from you. And for all of our alumni out there, stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, happy holidays, and go Valpo!